Good day to each and everyone. We are the group 3 and we are going to discuss or talk, talks about the global food security. So, what is global food security? Food security refers to the conditions in which at all times people have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet the dietary need and food preferences for an active and healthy life. Food security is dependent upon three factors: availability, stability, and accessibility of food supplies. To achieve national food security, a country must be able to grow sufficient food or have enough foreign exchange to enable it to import food. Growth in the agricultural sector has been found, on average, to be at least twice as effective in reducing poverty as growth in other sectors. Food insecurity, often rooted in poverty, decreases the ability of countries to develop their agricultural markets and economies. Access to quality, nutritious food is fundamental to human existence. Secure access to food can produce or provide wide ranging positive impacts, including economic growth and job creation, poverty reduction, trade opportunities, increased global security and stability, lastly, improve health and healthcare. As we all know, food security is one of the concerns in our country. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, hunger is one of the problems to global security. As the population has been more growing and many families are struggling to sustain enough food to every member of the family. That's why poverty occurs. The more our population keeps on growing, the more supplies or agricultural resources are needed. Another concern is the income growth. Can people at the same time be leveled with the increasing rates of the products or resources? Do they still have enough income to buy the needs despite their wages are also not increasing? That is one of the concerns of our country right now. Next, aside from the food, we also need the water. Many agricultural products depend on water. According to every studies, in a matter of 10 to 20 years, the source of green water would be one of the concerns because of the national growth or population growth and environmental degradation. The shortages would really increase the needs of water supplies. Also, food crisis is one of the concerns in our country. As we know, our country every year would always get struck by typhoons. That's why many food resources and agricultural products are destroyed due to natural calamities.
Cadet Nasrul O from the University of Cebu. So for today's video, I will be the one to discuss the examined state in the Philippines in terms of global food security during pandemic. So before I discuss about that, so let me define you what is global food security. So in the 1996, the World Food Summit defined food security as the condition when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preference for an active and healthy life. So the goal to ensure global food security has been included in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals or MDGs, as well as successor the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the SDGs. During the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought challenges to states, especially in terms of feeding their population. For instance, food supply chains have become vulnerable due to the movement's restriction of workers, changed demand of consumer, closure of food production facilities, restricted food trade policies, and financial pressure. Naturally, some states have implemented isolationist policy to protect their own food supply, to the detriment of other states depending on imports not only of food supply but also in food needs to cultivate food. However, states that the resulting food insecurity due to pandemics do not recognize political borders. Due to globalization, a global food trade has also increased to ensure food security. At the same time, factors affecting an individual state's food security have become global in nature, such as climate change and price volatility, to name a few. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has worsened these global problems as it is negatively affected global food supply chains. Those it is suggested that cooperation is needed to resolve them, as this critical juncture, food security is needed to keep the global population healthy. At the same time, given the problems on the food security associated with the pandemic, there is also need to rethink the issue of food as pandemic has exposed long-standing food issues. In the excuse me, in the food security in the world, some perennial issue in the Philippines that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated. Some factors that affects the current state of food insecurity in the Philippines are enhanced community quarantine or ECQ and its effects on food supply chains, food supply shocks in the Asian region, and natural calamities and infections of livestock. These factors will be examined as how they affect food security in the Philippines, as well as the possible strategies to help address food insecurity in the Philippines. So in the ACQ, there are a lot of impact on the quarantine food supply chains. So according to the Food and Agricultural Organization or FEO, the lockdowns have negatively affected food supply chains as they hampered the transport of goods and the movement of people. Per the FAO or the Food Agricultural Organization reports farmers report farmers and fisher folk found it is difficult to access inputs needed to the agricultural production and fisheries. The report has likewise noted the impact of lockdowns on the movement of people as well as closing of business due to restriction, which are essential part of supply chains. Eventually, the Philippines government was able to address the issue of the transformation of essential goods through the Department of Agricultural Food Pass and the Department of Trade Industry Cargo Pass. As discussed, the FAO or the Food Agricultural Organization Assessment, the Food Agricultural Assessment also took notice of the funding available for farmers and other affected groups during the pandemic. Despite these initiatives, some farmers associations have described the life during the lockdown has been extremely difficult. Prices of agricultural goods has been lower substantially to pay for loans. There are also farmers who have to throw away their produce as the demand fell, which was further exacerbated by the lack of transport services available. So some farmer groups has also reported that in order to survive, they really relied heavily on their respective networks. So apart from the domestic policies, the food situation in the Philippines is also affected by the development in the region. For instance, Vietnam has announced that it will suspend contract on rice exports to ensure adequate supply for its population. Cambodia eventually followed suit. This has been especially disadvantageous for the Philippines as it is the largest importer of rice globally. This prompted for the country to negotiate with the Myanmar to secure its rice supply. However, Myanmar has also suspended license for rice export. The issue was raised by the Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte during the Asian Online Summit in April 2020, urging Asian member states not to restrict food and medical supply during such a crucial period. He also emphasized the needs of Asians to remain open for trading, as it is necessary for the survival of all member states of the regional bloc. So there are a lot of natural calamities and a viral infection on livestock during the pandemic. So while we're dealing with the pandemic, the Philippines also struggle to face other realities such as natural calamities and viral infections on its livestock. One instance is the Typhoon Ulysses in the Philippines, which caused damage to the Philippine agricultural at the 12.8 billion. As a result, price of agricultural product has increased around 275%. At the same time, the Philippines has also been affected by the African swine fever or ESF. Due to the ESF, the Philippines has lost significant supply pork of products, those making pork patch steeper. As a response, the government implemented a price based on the pork and the chicken to taper food prices. Such policy has been met with the opposition because it did not address the real problem, which is the lack of supply of these food products. So what can be done to ensure food security for our country? For a country to be food secure, it must ensure the following pillars are in order. Since the Philippines is currently facing problems in terms of availability and accessibility all over country of food due to high prices brought about by supply shocks due to lockdowns or natural calamities or infestations such as infections such as ASF or American swine fever. There is a need to increase supply to normalize food price. At this point, cooperation through food trade is a good strategy, but a balance must be considered to also protect our local food producer. So in the short term, importing food products might help normalize the situation, but due care must be exercised due to valid concerns on its negative effect to local producer. If importation is considered to lower down food price, there should be support for local food producer as well. For the agricultural sector, for instance, there is a need for the government to help the farmers to lower the production costs and help them attain economies of scale. For livestock producer, the government needs to address the issue of ESF or American swine fever, as well as support them financially in the terms of transport costs and access to finances to address the lack of pork supply. At the same time, other food resources such as fish must remain stable for the food situation not to deteriorate further. This can be done according to the DA or the secretary if fisher folks under cooperatives are supported properly. But in the long run, the Philippines needs to ensure its food security by investing heavily in the agricultural sector. However, this must be done strategically. The 8 paradigms to level up Philippine agriculture is the good strategy to consider regarding Philippine food security. On the other hand, there is also need seriously considered alternative viewpoints to ensure food security. For instance, the idea of food sovereignty might be considered given the supply shocks that occurred during the early starts of the COVID-19 pandemic. While these two paradigms appear contradictory, these are also points of convergence that might help recalibrate how food security is seen in the Philippines. So, the issue of food in the parental problem in the Philippines has been exacerbated by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. In this respect, the government must strategic to address the issue of food. In this ongoing crisis, there are an action that can be done in the short term. At the same time, there are things to be considered in the long term. However, a deep assessment is clearly needed. On how food security is viewed in the Philippines. The issue of food insecurity in the Philippines must be clearly examined now so as not experience these problems again, especially if the Philippines has been faced another pandemic in the future. So that's all for now, and thank you.
Utilization essentially translates the food available to a household into nutritional security for its members. One aspect of utilization is analyzed in terms of distribution according to need. Nutritional standards exist for the actual nutritional needs of men, women, boys, and girls of different ages and life phases. But these needs are often socially constructed based on culture. For example, in South Asia, evidence shows that women eat after everyone else has eaten and are less likely than men in the same household to consume preferred foods such as meats and fish. Hidden hunger commonly result from poor food utilization. That is, a person's diet lacks the appropriate balance of macro calories and micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Individuals may look well nourished and consume sufficient calories but be deficient in key micronutrients such as the vitamin A, iron, and iodine. So utilization, the socio-economic aspect of household food and nutrition security, determined by knowledge and habits, assuming that nutritious food is available and accessible. The household has to decide what food to purchase and how to prepare it, as well as how to consume and allocate it within the household. Another aspect is the biological utilization. This relates to the ability of the human body to take food and convert it. This gained energy is very important when it comes to daily physical activities. For example, working in agriculture. Besides the utilization, requires a healthy physical, environmental, and adequate sanitary facilities, as well as understanding and awareness of proper health care, especially for preparing food and creating a healthy environment for the population. Safe drinking water is connected to groundwater, which is often contaminated through human, industrial, or agricultural wastewater in combination with other factors. 884 million people worldwide have no access to adequate drinking water. It is really important to utilize to ensure food security, because adequate food utilization is a key or component of food security. Access to safe water, good sanitation, and basic health care make a difference in nutritional well-being, as they have an impact on a body's ability to utilize and consume foods. There are a lot of ways to utilize food. Proper food processing and storage techniques are employed. Adequate knowledge of nutrition and child care techniques exist and is applied, and adequate health and sanitation services exist. Utilization is often used interchangeably with nutrition, yet while utilization focuses on nutrition, of course, it does also include food storage, processing, health, and sanitation, as they relate to nutrition, because bad habit of not utilizing food can affect our health as a human being. Some value chain programs have attempted to improve food utilization and achieve nutritional gains, mostly by targeting agricultural value chains. However, results have been mixed, and it is generally considered that much more could be accomplished. Based on evaluation of food for peace multi-year assistance programs Feed the Future, the government's Global Hunger and Food Security Initiative estimates that integrating a package of nutrition interventions into projects that are targeting agricultural food value chains can reduce chronic undernutrition by up to 57%. A recent review of experience says in applying the value chain approach to addressing nutrition is identified a serious lack of documented experience and case studies. A lot still remains to be learned. Understanding that the causes of malnutrition is an important starting point that will allow practitioners to identify the most appropriate intervention strategies. Food utilization is assessed at the individual level, often looking at dietary diversity to prevalence of malnourishment and child care practices. There are multiple tools and resources that identify problems of food utilizations. Utilization essentially translates the food available to a household into nutritional security for its members. One aspect of utilization is analyzed in terms of distribution according to need. Nutritional standards exist for the actual nutritional needs of men, women, boys, and girls of different ages and life phases. But these needs are often socially constructed based on culture. For example, in South Asia, evidence shows that women eat after everyone else has eaten and are less likely than men in the same household to consume preferred foods such as meats and fish. Hidden hunger commonly result from poor food utilization. That is, a person's diet lacks the appropriate balance of macro calories and micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Individuals may look well nourished and consume sufficient calories but be deficient in key micronutrients such as the vitamin A, iron, and iodine. So let's go to stability. Stability describes the temporal dimension of food and nutrition security. Respectively, the time frame over which food and nutrition security is being considered. Stability is given when the supply on household level remains constant during the year and in the long term. That includes food, income, and economic resources. Furthermore, it is important to minimize external risk such as natural disaster and climate change. Price volatility, conflicts, or epidemics through activities and implementation, improving the resilience of households. Such measures include insurance against drought and crop failure, as well as the protection of the environment and sustainable use of natural resources like land, soil, and water. Food security promotes stability and economic opportunity, of course. So, greater prosperity and economic growth in low-income countries create new and expanding markets, presenting growth opportunities, including us. So, rising incomes and changing diets are increasing demand for more diverse and nutritious food. As economies grow, so does the demand of agricultural products benefiting farmers locally and globally. Growing economic opportunities in the agriculture sector reach well beyond food production into sales of machinery and inputs growth and demands for consumer packaged goods and digital technology for agriculture, where American companies are global leaders. And also, it is when a population, household, or individual has access to food at all times it does not risk losing access as a consequence of cyclical events, such as a dry season. When some lack of food stability, they have a malnutrition. a lack of essential nutrients. This is economically costly because it can cost individuals 10% of their lifetime earnings in nation to 3 2 to 3% of gross domestic products or GDP. In the worst affected countries, achieving food security is even more challenging in the context of um, HIV and AIDS. HIV affects people's physical ability to produce and use food, reallocating household labor, increasing the work burden on women, and preventing widows and children from inheriting land and productive resources.
Good day to you, sir. We are Group 3, and our topic is all about global food security. So, I'm going to discuss about the five components of food security. So, what is food security? So, food security has four interrelated elements. So, that is the availability, the access, utilization, and stability. So, the first is gonna talk about the availability. So, what is the availability in food security? Availability is about food supply and trade, not just the quantity but also the quality and diversity of food. So, improving the availability requires sustainable productive farming systems, well managed natural resources, and policies to enhance productivity. So the next is going to talk about the access. So what is access? Access covers economic and physical access to food. So to improving access requires better market access for smaller holders, allowing them to generate more income from cash crops, livestock, products, and other enterprises. So the special mention that is not been mentioned from the food security is the malnutrition. So I'm gonna talk about the malnutrition. So what is the malnutrition? So malnutrition in all its forms includes undernutrition, wasting, stunting, underweight, inadequate vitamins or minerals, overweight, obesity, and resulting diet related non communicable diseases. So it refers to deficiencies, excesses, or imbalances in a person's intake energy and or nutrients. So, talking about the availability of food security, so my explanation about the availability in food security is during the pandemic are going down due to our economic crisis on what we face right now. So, which means they secure our food for the people to export our food and to rotate only here in our country because due to pandemic people badly needed the availability of our needs and foods to survive. So I'm gonna talk about or to explain about the access of food security. So the access of the food security for our food can't be export as of now due to our pandemic. And due to our pandemic, lots of health protocols that needed to be complied. And by that, our government had done it also not to export our products because it is for us people and our needs to survive. Surviving the pandemic right now is very hard to other people, mostly the poor people. So due to pandemic, lots of factories closes and can't export their products. But some factories lessen their employees and lack of products to be finished. If we export our products due to crisis or the pandemic, our products will lack and the most important need for us people in our country. We also need mostly sponsors from the food companies from other countries because our own products and needs are not enough for the people. So, talking about malnutrition can affect people. There are a lot of people suffers hunger, not enough food, especially the poor people. Our body uses the various nutrients in food to be healthy. If there are no enough food can affect a person's nutrition status. When prices rise, it is the poor people who are most at risk and to suffer because they spend a much higher portion of their income on food. And due to pandemic right now, people are suffering not enough food or not to be healthy because it is hard to find food for now, and due to lack of products, the price are higher than the normal price before.
Good day, sir. So, I'm going to discuss the threats of global food security. So, the first threat is climate change. So, climate change, inarguably, this is food security biggest challenge. Climate change is clear indication that nature's balance is messed up. Weather patterns become erratic and more intense. Temperatures either go up or dip. Sea levels rise and landscapes are drastically change. Sadly, plants, trees, and wildlife simply don't have enough time to evolve to adapt to the new conditions. Obviously, agriculture takes a hit too because it depends so much on nature, on water, air, soil, and weather. When plants refuse to flower because it's too much humid, when pests abound because of hot temperatures, when super typhoons destroy crops such as rice, and when too cold weathers freeze our vegetables, we're screwed. So, example ang example sa climate change is ang pagsunog sa mga plastics. So, kibaw jud ta tanan nga apektuhan jud ang pag rice fields and other kinds of foods na matanom or plants kay tagtuyot na sa yuta or ang yuta kuwangan og tubig kay tungod atong ozone layer nagkaanam-anam og kabuslot. So kung magkaanam-anam og kabuslot nato ozone layer, so mas grabe ang init. So dako kayong epekto ang mga tanom ana kay ang yuta magkaliki-liki or walay enough water na masustain sa tanom even sa mga river nagkahubas tungod ana. So ang dapat nato buhaton is magpundo og tubig sa dam para ang mga palay and other plants na water even though init kayo ang panahon, then na-cycle sa water na makaagi ra ang tubig para tanan palay and plants mabutangan og water. So second is aging farmers. So we have a lot of things farmers for. Without them, we would grow our food. So that's why the rapid decline of farmers, old farmers aging out with few young ones to replace them. It is a big concern that next generation is hesitant to go into farming because of lack of capital or owned land. Others are drawn to careers that are more financially rewarding, easier, and prestigious. And with climate change around, this poses uncertain problems from the unprepared aspiring farmers. So aging farmers kanang kita man jud tanan magkatigulang, like mga batan ng farmers moabot man jud ng katiguwang. So dapat na sila mga replacement. So kailangan ta magandam nga na yung replacement mga young ones to replace them. Example sa eskwelahan naman tayo mga TLE like agriculture. So, dapat nato sila i-train para ma-enhance ang mga young ones nga kibaw mo tanom para ma-replace ang mga kanang di na kaya sa mga tao nga mga idaran na. Sa the third one is massive bee die-offs. It might be an exaggeration to say that when the bees go extinct, we die too, because after all, bees are responsible for pollinating majority of the food crops we depend on. Yes, food production will be significantly affected, but not a point that will die too. Other insect pollinators will take over the bees. They say and life will go on for us. But a species snuffed out, but the planet is still a death of mourn. Especially the reason for their death is something is preventable as the use of pesticide. Whether the dwindling bee population will affect food security or not, the more serious matter to think about is what once again species is a danger of being wiped out all because of us. So one of the threat is na massive bee die. Oops, daghang bees ang mga matay. So kibaw man ta nga dakong tabang ang mga bees kay mao na sila mohatag og mga pampatambok sa atong mga tanom. So using our pesticides matay nun sila. So kita ra gyapon makasayop nga mga matay sila. So that's all, sir. Thank you.
Genetic engineering. Plant genetic engineering has always prided itself as a well-meaning solution to many of agriculture problems. How to resist pests, how to get better, faster yield, how to have vitamins, fortified crops, how to fare in extreme weather conditions, and etc. If done correctly and normally, genetically modified food, GMO food, just might be able to address the global food insecurity problems we have. Still, there are ethical and health safety issues to consider. As a rule, nature does not like being messed around with, and our interventions may have unintended, unforeseeable effects. So, genetic engineering in agriculture, in genetic engineering, they are using chemicals, and it would cause unnatural changes in plants' own naturally occurring proteins or metabolic pathways, and results in the unexpected production of toxin or allergens in foods. So examples of genetic engineering, we have plant grower and insect resistance. So soil erosion. Soil erosion. According to the WWF, we've lost half of the topsoil on our planet in the last 150 years. That's pretty serious because the topsoil happens to be where plants get most of their nutrients. Deforestations and incorrect agriculture practices such as overgrazing and use pesticides are to blame. The topsoil gets washed into our rivers and lakes, polluting them and affecting aquatic life, or else they clog our waterways and contribute to flooding. Because we're left with barren earth, we depend on chemical fertilizer to enrich the land. Often, do this fertilizer destroys nature's balance, polluting the soil, killing the soil's biodiversity, and eventually contaminating our foods. So, soil erosion because of human activities such as using of chemical fertilizer. It pollutes the soils that causes soil erosion and reduces cropland productivity. So the example of this is a crop field was severely washed out during a heavy rainfall. And lastly, we have the land development. Agriculture land turned into developed land is another serious threat to food security. Once that land is developed for buildings, we forever lose one more patch of land that could have been purposed for food production. So because agriculture land has been turned into real estates like buildings and businesses, there will be only few lands left where to plant and produce foods. For example, a day constructions of roads, buildings, houses, parking lots, and etc.
Good day, sir. I'm Cadet John Mark CP. Today, I will discuss my topic about is food security possible? The United Nations Sustainability developed goals include eradication of hunger to feed 10 billion persons in 2050. We need to get the trade of right between sustainability, food security, food safety, and make better use food already produced. The hierarchy of strategies for reducing food losses and waste are in this descending order: source reduction, reusing of reprocessing surplus foods, recycle food as feed for animals, recover the energy as biofuels, nutrients, and compost or raw materials. For industry, while and last resort, one may consider recovering the energy by incineration or dumping as a garbage in landfills. This paper will explore the trade-off inherent when aiming at triple goals of sustainability: food security and safety, looking at these strategies for reducing food losses and waste, and resources footprints, intensification of food production, and circular food systems could be parts of the solution to future food security. In this regard, could our future trade-off be informed by expresses from the use of antimicrobials to intensify food production, and from the outbreak of bovine spongiform encephalopathy. In terms of circular food production, there is no trade-off between intensification of food production aided by antimicrobials and the public health risk from antimicrobial resistance due to the zootechnical use of antimicrobials. A sustainable future requires control of antimicrobial resistance. If one avoid that cycles of nutrients become cycles of pathogens and of hazards, circular food production system will a major contribute to the future sustainable for security source reduction. Limiting food losses and waste appears to the strategy most promising for achieving sustainability. By using artificial intelligence and intelligent packaging, major progress and possible with the added benefit of better control of a food fraud. A changed diet, eating more plant-based foods and not eating animal protein produced by edible feedstuffs, and source reduction of the food lost of wasted should enable us to feed at least an additional billion person. Solution to sustainability and food security should integrate food safety consideration from the start. Food losses might be the result of pre-harvest failures. For example, in U.S. study of pre-harvest losses of vegetables, more than half of the vegetable crops were not harvested, indicating a huge potential for increased food production. The edible and wholesome vegetables, cucumbers, zucchini, bell peppers, cabbage, eggplant, yellow squash, and etc. Food losses occurs also at harvest, and post-harvest due to the problems in processing, handling, packing, transportation, and retail. Some of underlying causes of food loss include the inadequacies of infrastructure, could change, skewed, and incentives of lack of legal frameworks, waiting for customers' clearance, tomatoes crushed during transport because of improper packaging is one of example of food loss. Food waste, on the other hand, refers to the discharging of food that is safe and nutritious for human consumption. For example, binding tomato cans if the labels on the can is incomplete or the labels was peeled off. The reasons for food loss and waste. And that's all. Thank you.
Food security is achieved when all people at all times have physical, economic, and social access to enough food of good quality for a healthy and active life. This definition covers four fundamental aspects of food security, which is availability, access, utilization, and stability. The ultimate goal is the highest level objective of food security interventions is individual food utilization, for which not only food access is required but also food quality, safe drinking water, and hygiene. Individual access, in turn, depends on household access and intra-household distribution, including gender-based discrimination. Stability in access depends on the availability over the year and between years. At the proxy impact level, household food access depends on a combination of families' own food production, income, food prices, and household buffers. Money food storage capacity to bridge food storage periods. For example, between harvest, food availability at the local or national level is conditioned but no guarantee for food access. As households may not be able to afford or access needed food at the national level, is available is food availability is the sum of domestic food production, food imports, food stocks, and international food aid, minus food exports. Export earnings allow food import, natural resource management, land tenure security, and financial service also support households to maintain their productive capital. Food security has a four unrelated elements, which is the availability, access, utilization, and stability. Availability is about food supply and trade, not just the quantity but also the quality and diversity of food. Improving availability requires a sustainable, productive farming system will manage natural resources and policies to enhance productivity. Access covers economic and physical access to food. Improving access requires better market access for smallholders, allowing them to generate more income from cash crops, livestock, livestock product, and other enterprises. Utilization is about how the body uses the various nutrients in food. A person's preparation, diversity of their diet, and intra-household distribution of food all affect person's nutrition. Improving utilization requires improving nutrition, food safety, increasing diversity diets, reducing post-harvest loss, and adding value to food. And lastly, stability is about being food secure at all times, and food insecurity can be transitory with short-term shocks, the results of a bad season, and change in employment status. Conflict or a rise in food prices, which is when prices rise, it is it is the poor who are the most at risk because they spend a much higher portion of their income on food.